Hello and welcome back to my daily 3D modeling challenge, where today I'm going to make this like sort of Chinese scroll painting style mountain landscape. As always, leave a comment down below if you have a challenge for me, but otherwise my time starts now. So I recently read this manhua called Festival of Mount Hua, and here's this panel from it that I really liked, and I thought, oh hey, maybe I could try to recreate this in 3D. Now it's very obviously inspired by this kind of like landscape painting. This is done by Kang Xie. This is the Emperor Scroll 3. I believe I got this image from the Met, but I wanted to try to recreate this in Blender, using Blender. So I guess, and I will say I've already made one attempt, but it was definitely a failed attempt, so I'm not coming at this blind. But otherwise, my general approach is going to be, I'm going to try to copy this style in particular, but I'm going to make sort of subdivided, like sort of slopey shapes, and then I'm going to copy paste that a couple times, and then I'll also add some sort of sub lines, and then I'm going to go really in depth into the object line art to try and make it as, close to this style, to this manhua panel, as I can possibly get it. But other than that, that's gonna be it. Maybe I'll try for the clouds, but I want to focus on getting the mountains right more than anything. So the general idea is we're gonna have a cube, we're gonna put some subdivisions on it, not geometry nodes. I've thought about an approach with geometry nodes using basically replicating a bunch of spheres for sort of this kind of part where it has a bunch of those little details, or for the peaks of these mountains, but I've decided against that approach. But the usual, gonna add a subsurf. We'll give it a couple subdivisions. 2 is probably good in the render, and then we'll say shade smooth. But how shall we begin? I think I'll start off by making this sort of broad shape I want to go for. So I'll scale it out to be just massively wide, and then we'll bring it down like that. Now it looks like they have like a sort of defined part where they become noticeably thinner. So we can just add a loop cut, scale it down, and maybe even scale this up a bit. And that seems like a good sort of starting base for what we want to recreate. I want to go ahead and pose my camera really quickly, just so that I know the shot I'm going to be making. So it's always camera to view, and then I want to just zoom out, and I want to model this at a massive scale. I don't want to make it too small, just because I want the lighting to be, semi-realistic, and that works better when Blender is working at the proper scale. A good example of this is sort of the field of view attribute, or depth of field attribute, rather. You'll get a better effect if it's at like miniature scale, for example. I saw that in a Blender Guru, like BlenderCon talk. And for the camera, I also want to make sure that we change the clipping plane to be like 1,000 meters, so that we can just get it nice and big. And we'll put it on like the right sort of third, 2/3. We'll trail it this way, or maybe trail it this way, and then yeah, that'll be good. So give me background, or no, viewport display, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and I want the top of the peak to align sort of like this, so maybe it needs to be more like that. Okay, that seems like a good start to me. And so why don't we do this like a naive way for now? We'll duplicate this, bring it down, come into this view, bring it down, and I guess we'll just keep repeating that process. We can sort of bring it and let it meander a bit, right? Nature's chaos. It's not going to be all perfectly the same distance between, same, any of that stuff. So we'll bring it out like that, and then that actually looks pretty good as a starting point to me, but I want to go ahead and make sure that these are properly wobbly. So they all have this sort of like wiggles to them. So I want to make sure I sort of add those. And that's with the shape, not with the textures. The texture is going to be a very different process, So I want to add in just some, a little bit of random warbles to them, add in some loop cuts, can pull them this, that, in the other direction, because this is a bit too far out that way. Go, pull that down, pull this over, loop cut, and just make it a bit more chaotic, a bit weirder. Okay, so that's a really good base, I think. But one thing I'm noticing is that it starts off wide and then gets thinner. So why don't I sort of go into proportional editing, and in object mode, actually, I can scale along the local X and just increase the radius so that each of these is also getting bigger. And I want a sharper fall off. So we can say sharp like that on the X. And that actually looks kind of good to me. I'll turn proportional editing off, and we'll just shift that over a bit. But otherwise now I'm actually thinking that this is looking pretty good. To make the slope more realistic, what I want to do is I'll go into a side view, or actually I'll take all of these and join them together, and then I'll have all of these slopes. I'll just grab all of them and scale them to be 0 on the z-axis, so just like that. And now they all sort of line up a bit. And then what I can do is add in, so it looks like they're a little bit closer together on their peaks, on the y-axis. Like this is too much of a distance, so what I might do is we'll just grab these and move them up. And what this will do is actually help us with our shading later. I think. But, you know, even if it doesn't, we tried. So we can move that down a bit, move this up a bit. Can even scale this down on the Y just a bit. And just keep moving things, nudging things around until they look right. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Now what I'll do is I'm not liking the lack of sort of, I guess, volume in these mountains. So I want to add, first off, I want to make sure that these sort of go down all the way and they don't sort of round off at the bottom there. So we can even scale these out and pull them down, and that fixes that issue. But for now, I think that should be good for us to get a start on shading these guys. Okay, so I know I'm gonna want, we can leave it in textured view for now because it's gonna be horribly dark in rendered view until I get lighting figured out. But okay, so I know we don't want this to be photoreal, but I don't want it to be completely, you know, non-3D. So I'll start off with just a diffuse, and then I'll add in, I'll do a wave texture. You can click on that, and then add in a mapping node. And I think we want these from the UV coordinates of the object. And that actually seems, oh, maybe we want them from the camera. Okay, I think this is actually what we want. And we can turn the scale way, way down. Okay. And then I think we can just rotate these. That's the wrong axis on the Z, perhaps object coordinates. I'm trying to get the like warbled effect that goes up one side and down the other. And I've gotten it before, so I know it's possible, but you know how these things go. So it looks like this is closer to what I want, but I'm not liking the way it's looking, sort of like these massive, you know, things. So actually we can change the scale a bit like that. Maybe increase the scale, decrease the scale, and then I'll add in a color ramp. Like so, move this out of the way. And I want to sharpen up the edges between them, maybe less of that. Then I'll increase the scale. And now one thing I note about these, and even this, you can see, is that it uses sort of a noisy effect. And this actually has sort of like a stippled, dithered maybe look with the wavy lines. They're not like wavy like this, but there's a very clear like flow and direction coming up and even down the mountains using the direction of those little dots. So what we want to do is make a mix color where we can plug this in as like the A, and then just like white in as the B. And as the factor, we can add in a noise texture. Again, we can control T, it's fine being generated. And then we also want a color ramp for this, put that in there. And why don't we visualize that for a second? So we want our noise to be a bit more defined. Like that is probably good. I want a lot of detail in it. And I also want a lot of scale in it because I just want some chaos in how it's distributed. I don't necessarily want it to be, you know, empty. So I'll add in, I think that's a good start. Let's just see how that looks. So we'll plug this into the result and we'll use this as the factor. So that adds some nice variations to that. And I might see what this sliders do. Okay, that looks really good, I think. Now, for the colors, we can use another mix node, use that as the factor. And now we'll start off with a base of sort of, and I like these colors much more, where it's sort of a beige and green kind of thing going on. So I'll go for that. So we can just make it sort of beige, and then make this sort of green, but dark and a little warmer like that. And that looks really bad, but it's just a start. And also on the waves, why don't we make, is there a way I can make these edges less defined? Honestly, yeah, I think it's fine leaving it super like that. But okay, so that's good for a start for the colors. I'm not too happy about this one. It's a little too red for me, so push it away from the red a bit maybe. Okay, sure, I can start with that. But I also want to add in just like a noise texture to each of these, just to add some detail in the color. This is something I did with my anchor, if you saw that video. If not, that's fine. It's not too great of a video, but so we'll just use this noise texture. And I think it'd be interesting to have the same factor apply. Let's get some control over the noise. Let me check that out for a second. But I want to use this noise texture to impact the color. So maybe we can change the scale and make our blacks more defined. Or honestly, we can even do that, feed that into the color. But now one of these is going to be the greens. One of these is going to be the beiges. I forget which is which. So I'll just start by, you know, changing one of them and seeing how it goes. So you should be, okay, so you're the greens. So we'll make you all green, and then I'll make you all yellow and see how we start. I think that's good, but I want to make it, I'll make these colors a bit more similar. So we'll copy, paste that. Shout out a YouTube commenter who taught me that trick. So we'll do a little bit like that. That looks good. Turn up the detail on this noise a bit. And this kind of variation is very subtle and almost imperceptible, but it makes it look much richer than if it were not there. And then I actually want the greens to be just darker like that, even a bit darker, and maybe I'll push it to a bit cooler. Okay. That's a start. So now for the layout, what I want to do is change it to rendered view, and there's no shading going on in this image. And I actually do want to see how this looks with our diffuse. So plug that into the color and maybe like this. Okay. not too good. So maybe we can change the world settings. We can say use nodes world. And why don't we add just like a very basic, and we can make it brighter and give it a strength of like 3, maybe a strength of like 5, make it white even. We do want it to use nodes like that. Okay, so maybe 3, and then we can turn this down just a bit until we get colors that we're satisfied with. The background of this is pure white, but that's accented by the fact that they have sort of these big sloping white mountains. The background of this is that sort of beige color. So maybe we'll go for that. We'll go for like a weathered kind of hue. So I think we'll start with that. And I want to make it just a bit brighter, but I won't do that with the sky. Instead, I'll do that with the sun. And then let's just change the lighting like that. Make the sun stronger, make it weaker. 1.5 even. Okay, I'm happy with that because I want there to be some contrast from the different sides of the mountain. But now we get to the fun part where we can add in an object line art. So we can go to the line art and okay, it's not looking too big. Maybe we have to crank the line thickness way up. Yeah, we do. Okay, so the line thickness, super thick. Edge types, I want to make this just the silhouette. Or no, actually just the contour like that. And then I want to add some noise to it. So maybe even multiple strokes. Okay, cool. We can start with that. Then we can add some offset to them or maybe increase the distance between them. Okay, so that thickens up the stroke. And then I want to fade it towards the center like that, sure. And okay, I'm really liking how this is turning out. I don't like whatever's going on down here. Maybe that's an issue with the geometry. I think it's this one. Okay, it's still weird and disconnected, but you know what? Whatever. That was an issue. What did we change? I believe it was the distance offset. No. Maybe it was just the offset. No. Maybe we need to change the contour angle. No. No intersections. Okay, fine intersections. No edge markers. No loose marker, no material borders, individual silhouette, no whatever. We'll leave it as contour and we'll be fine with a little bit of imperfection in our image. It never hurt nobody, you know? So now line art effect. I've never done many of these actually, but why don't we add in some effects? Or we can just reset that, change the phase, reset that. Maybe horizontal. Nope. Maybe we want to pixelate to like 10 pixels. Nope. And these might only appear in the render, or they perhaps might be in the compositing layer, but we're not going to worry about that. Why don't we add another modifier to this? So we have multiple strokes, envelope, length, line art, mirror, multiple. I think we can add some noise to these. Why don't we add it to the baseline? So maybe strength, and we do want the noise scale to be much larger. So I want these to be imperfect lines. And actually, instead of making these multiple strokes change the opacity, I'm not liking the effect anymore. So I'll turn that down. I'll turn the thickness, the fade of the thickness down. I want a little bit still though. So I think that's a good start. We have about 9 minutes left. So now why don't we make one of those clouds that I was talking about? So I'll add in a plane, Alt G, and that's the origin. So I'll move it over here, M at center. Now we can add some modifiers. We can say generate skin, and we can also add in a subsurf. And this will actually make it super easy for us to make clouds. And actually, why don't we not edit mode. We can start it back there and then tab in edit mode, Control A, give it a really big radius. But now we can replicate these spirals. So it starts off by going down, then over, then over, then over, and it sort of folds in on itself. So we can expand this one. Okay, I'm not sure if any of that was in view, but Blender just crashed. Whatever, we're back at it. We'll not let that stop us. So it folds over on itself, then it comes down, gets a bit thinner, and then it comes out like this, and gets thinner on the way. Maybe it even has a couple of ups and downs as it goes, like that. Maybe we'll add another subdivision. So then also we can add in some loops to this part to better define the sphericality, I guess, of the curves. Okay, so I think that's a good start. And then I'll also add in an object line art, and we'll crank the thickness up like so. And the lines around these don't actually need to be so thick. Oh, and also on the material for this line art, instead of just being plain black, I want to make it sort of a dark, very dark green. And then these clouds, the shading, all of these objects shade smooth. So this is shaded, or it's on the world with no material, but it honestly kind of looks good already. Maybe it's worth adding a material, changing it to a diffuse like so. I can see it's not shading smooth, so we'll just manually reapply, and we'll make sure it has more subdivisions like that. And then for these lines, why don't we make them sort of black, make them white maybe? How does that look? It's too white, so I'll make them lean towards the background color a bit. And I want them bright enough so that you can tell there's an outline, but not so much that it's so super duper prominent. Actually, why don't we just add a shader to RGB, add a color ramp, and then I don't like how the cloud has so much shadow. So I want to tune in and affect the white stop just a bit. Oh, and actually, you know, why don't we do this whole rigmarole, separate color. Okay, only a few minutes left. So I'll just copy paste this cloud a bunch, come back color, and bam. Okay, so that actually kind of looks cool with the weird color cloud. That might be something worth looking into if I wanted to make this render idea really my own. But for now, I'm good with how it looks. So let's do that. Change you to HSV, value there. And okay, now we're getting what we want. So maybe I want to bring this up and just flatten it out a bit like that. So okay, now that's good. Scale this down, rotate it 180. And actually on all of these, we want to say shadows none. Or actually it's the same material. Shadow mode, none. Shadow mode, none, none, and none. But now it's getting impacted by the presence of the mountains, which is good, but actually it would make sense that the mountains cast a shadow. So that's actually fine, but I want to brighten this guy up. Okay, beautiful. Move it back, RX 180. All right, still good on time. So, all right, I'm liking the general effect, but not liking the color of this. Why don't I make this actually an emission? An emission where we have a Fresnel that defines the strength. Yeah, that's gonna be much better. So mix color or map range. Like so, the minimum of, I don't know, 1 with a maximum of something like 5, and we'll change the color to, we want it to lean, like we said, towards the sky, and then instead of 5, the difference is too drastic. Make it like 3, maybe 4, and now we're able to highlight the contours in our clouds without going overboard on the shading, and it's not actually affected by the shading, which is how it should be. So I'll rotate that a bit. Maybe I'll even just move it to the back, because I don't want it to impact our line art. And okay, I'm going to desaturate the color a bit, crank up the brightness to a minimum of 2 to maybe a maximum of 3, maybe 5, or 4, maybe 5. Shifty over here. All right, I'm actually really happy with how this turned out. I don't have any photos of the render, but my first one did not turn out too well. In fact, here, you can zoom in. So I'll tweak the line art before I post a thumbnail of this, but I'm actually really happy with how this looks. Real quick, I'll open, let me see if it's in my recent. Yeah, here it is. It looks really bad. You can see what I was going for, but like I said, just not too good. And the effect that we achieved today, don't say that, this effect is just miles better. So that's gonna be the conclusion of my daily 3D modeling challenge. As always, leave a comment if you have another challenge for me to try. Other than that, this has been Patrick. Thanks for watching.